Hey,
Back to
Good
backs.
afternoon, everyone. Sorry about that.
No, listen, we understand. Mine's ended early. That's why I was the only reason I was able to jump on a few minutes early.
Hello,
Uh,
Nate. We just
Hello.
pressed start on the webinar so that all of the participants are rolling in, and we had quite a few, so this may take just a few moments.
Great.
hey, Jeremy.
Hey, good afternoon.
You know what? I just realized we got a heavy OVG representation right now. I like it.
OBG in the
Oh,
house.
oh, they roll it in too. Look at that, 74. Oh, here they come. Here they come.
They are gonna slowly but surely keep filtering in, so if you all are ready, we will go on ahead and get started so that we don't waste any of the time for today. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just going to go on ahead and say welcome to all of our participants. Thank you for joining us today for the next E3 webinar series. And my name is Amy Fitzpatrick. I'm the Director of Marketing. I am here simply to say thank you and welcome for joining us, and to turn this over to Miss Ebony Wilson, our Chair of the Diversity and Inclusive Leadership Committee. Thanks, Ebony.
Thank you as always, Amy. Greatly appreciate it. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our E3. We are so excited to have you join us today for, this amazing conversation with this amazing group of people. So Amy just told us that this is one of our highest registrations. So we are so excited again to have you here. And as we come to the end of this conversation, if there are any topics that you would love for us to cover in the future, definitely drop them in the chat and let us know. I'm going to turn it over quickly to my co-chair, Jeremy, because he is on, just in case he wants to say a couple words before I turn it over to our moderator.
I'm going to be brief because I'm super excited about this, but no, I think this is an amazing initiative, and I'm looking forward to a great conversation here. So thank you all for joining us, and again, thank all of our panelists for being here.
Awesome. So I am going to turn it over to my friend and colleague, Cameron, who is going to help introduce us to the panel and, kick our topic off. Please, everybody, as you're coming in, definitely let us know where you are joining us from. So your name, your venue, and what you do. And Cameron, my friend, take it away.
all right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's good to have you join us. Glad to have you as part of this great conversation. We're looking for this to be just a conversation discussion among friends. Good time to be able to just kind of talk about the topic. Nothing we want to leave unturned or undiscussed. So feel free, as Ebony said, to drop your thoughts, ideas, questions into the chat. That'll be where we'll definitely be utilizing that to have some more discussion. Just for those of way of introduction, those who may not know me, I am Cameron Durham, the Managing Director of Event Services for Lumen Field, First and Gold, home of the Seattle Seahawks. Been in the industry for quite a while and very happy to be part of this great discussion. I'm going to take the opportunity to let our panelists introduce themselves real quickly, give a brief intro, and then we'll go right into the first question. So we'll go ahead and start with Nate and kind of move around.
Thanks, Cameron. Nate Harris, General Manager with OVG at the VSU Multipurpose Center on the campus of Virginia State University. I've been in the industry for close to 15 years. Many of the venues I've worked at are in the Northeast, but excited to be part of this conversation and share some hopefully some great thoughts.
Next we have, let's go ahead, Eric.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eric Bovenkamp. I am the Senior Manager of Guest Experience for Hornet Sports and Entertainment. Oversee all of our guest service and experience initiatives for both the Charlotte Hornets and also the Spectrum Center for all events that we have there. been in the industry for 6 years when you include my experience with the Hornets, and then also dating back to my time with the Walt Disney Company prior to that.
Right. Last but not least, with Agmar.
Hi, everyone. I am Agmar, and like Cameron, I'm also in Seattle. I am at Clement Pledge Arena. I'm the director of hospitality and arena public tours. Our hospitality team basically is a premium team that supports all of our suites, and it's kind of that guest experience side. I started working in entertainment when I was 16 years old, worked in theater, had a degree in theater, and moved to venues. Very excited to be here.
Great. Oh, good. Again, welcome to all three of you. We're looking forward to this discussion. I'll go ahead and kick off with a question. I'll throw it to Agmar first, since you're right up the street. Be easier to start with you. It's a very simple softball one, hopefully. Why, DEI is a big topic everyone talks about all the time. We've got this topic. We're talking about complaints and how to make it possible to have a more inclusive environment. Why is this topic so relevant for today's facilities and our industry?
I mean, I think specifically, I will speak on my experience. I'm from Puerto Rico, so I grew up in an island, moved to the US when I was 11, and I never imagined all of the things that I would have been able to accomplish. And I think when I went to school, there were very few things that my guidance counselors would say, hey, this is what you can go for. These are the schools you can go to. And I had to do a lot of that discovery on my own because, I wasn't a native English speaker. So as a millennial growing up in this time and with all of the changes, we've been able, now that we're a global community, like we're able to see everything that is out there, right? And we're able to communicate in a way that we haven't before. And with people living longer and staying in the workforce longer, there are so many different people now in the workforce coexisting together. So it's something that I don't think in the world we've ever seen before. And we're all so diverse in so many different ways. Usually when people talk about diversity, sometimes they're really focusing on what is your race, right? But diversity means so much more. And there's a lot of conversations about equity and inclusion. And to me, I think just growing up and being a child born in the 80s and now being in my 40s and being a millennial and seeing how everything has changed, is just part of my everyday life.
Thank you so much. Eric, how about you? Why do you believe this topic is relevant for today's conversation?
So I think I look at it two sides. First and foremost, when you're looking at the venue itself, and not only the events that we're bringing into the venues, but also the guests who are coming into the venues, you're seeing such a wide variety of types of events, different types of guests, things people are interested in, whatever it is. So it's really important for us as the venue to understand what those differences are and place importance on them. Then on the flip side, when you look at it from the teams that we all have and the people who are helping to put on the venues, it's such a diverse grouping of people. It's not the same. Not all of us have the same background. We all come from different types of backgrounds, different places, different understandings of how we view the world. So to be able to look at it through all of those different lenses help us not only be successful, but help us better serve and relate to the guests and the individuals coming to our venue. So having those two kind of mindsets coexist together and constantly be front of mind as we're thinking about this topic, and making sure that it is front of mind and it's not just kind of brushed aside, I think is really important. And I think that's what leads to just that overall success on both sides of that coin.
Sounds great. Nate, how about you?
I'll share, I'll say it's relevant now. It was relevant 10, 15 years ago. It was relevant even before then, and it'll be relevant in the future. I think there's diversity, equity, inclusion as it relates to any workspace, particularly in the venues we work at and the communities we work at. We always kind of share, especially as venue operators, we talk about being a beacon or a place of community for the entire communities that we serve. And so with that being across America, across the world. All of our communities are different. And so having a lens through a diversity, equity, inclusion lens, it's super important to be able to do that in order to show up for our communities in those particular ways. And I appreciate what some of the panelists had shared, because what we do is bring people together. It doesn't matter what race, creed, or nationality you come from. We bring people together, and people are people. And so if we can look at people as individuals and not necessarily by the things that and what they bring to the table, and we don't kind of take our own perspectives from based on what we believe personally about other people, but listen to people for who they are, we're actually able to serve them in a much better way. And when we're in a business of service and hospitality, there's we are short-sighted if we don't look at it from a diversity, equity, inclusive lens, because we can't serve the people the way they need to be served if we're only looking at ourselves.
Gotcha. That's great, Nate. Thank you so much for that. Eric, I'm gonna come back to you and ask you, where are you seeing accessibility, representation, inclusion being modeled best right now? Where are some places you're kind of gleaning some great best practices from?
So from our standpoint, we work a lot with our city and the local, Charlotte government and things along those lines. They put on, biweekly seminars and webinars and all these different things to kind of talk more about the different levels of inclusion and accessibility from a variety of different backgrounds and what it impacts. Not only is it talking about ADA accessibility from a seating or venue perspective, but also from a generational perspective, all those different things. So we take a lot of that information and work really closely with them, but also work or are starting to work closely with some of the different more activist groups in the city to get their knowledge on how we can better create a more inviting, accessible building and environment for all our different guests. So it's a lot of those conversations. And also, when we have guests in the building and are requesting different accessibility needs or reaching out to us, we take that information pretty seriously and have the different conversations that how we can improve better. It helps for us about to undergo this renovation that we're about to undergo this summer, that we can look at a lot of those things and really implement that to make our building a lot more accessible and the experience a lot more accessible, not only just the physical building, but also the different services we offer. That's kind of been 20 years worth of information built up that now can be put into practice into a modern space. So we're really trying to gain information from all the different platforms or groups that we have available to make sure that we, again, are making sure that our experience is representative of every different group that can come visit the arena.
Gotcha. How about Agmar? How are you doing that?
Yeah, I piggyback on everything Eric said, and I think one huge tool that we are currently using are both our surveys for our internal guests, so our team members, and our external guests. We recently hired someone, his name is Garrett, and he's great, who analyzes all of the data so that he's looking at what the guests are looking for, right? And kind of like pinpointing what is it that we're missing? What are we not offering? What else can we bring in? And we're bringing in more training just for managers and heads of departments as well. One thing that I've seen in the last 10 years is a great adaptability in these front of house departments, guest experience, right? Hospitality, security, merchandise, where they are adapting these jobs that are normally would have said maybe 20 years ago, must be able to stand for long periods of time, walk for long periods of time, and adapting and figuring out how can we bring an accommodation so that we can open this up to a myriad of folks as well. And I'm very proud of the work that's being done here in Seattle. I've seen, we share some team members between our venues that may be legally blind, who are wheelchair bound, and a myriad of other things. And the way that this community has gotten together to just share these individuals and bring opportunities to them is really quite wonderful.
That's great. That's great. Nate, I'll come back to you as well, and ask you the same question. Where are you seeing accessibility, representation, and inclusion being modeled best um, currently?
Yeah, I would echo what Eric had shared. Our local localities have been really helpful in kind of helping us determine some of those things. Um, I kind of go back to some of the mentors who've come before me, and I had the fortune of working in Philadelphia at a period of time, and worked with some folks who ran large corporations, not within our industry, diversity and equity pieces, around, especially around accessibility. And so taking best practices, not just from our industry, but that could possibly translate into ours, has been really helpful for me. And so I kind of really glean from other people's expertise to be able to do those things. But our university, our local locality has been really helpful in helping us draft and kind of create plans for it. The biggest thing too also is I listen to the client. So as we bring in specifically not necessarily concerts and events, but more your more intimate and your client directly related events, really listening to them about who their audience is and being able to address the needs that they have. We recently did a robotics competition, and they asked for a quiet room. We didn't have a quiet room. We created a quiet room, right, for students who had autistic needs, or some of the other needs that they may had, just to create a space where they could get away from what was going on, right? So listening and talking to your clients to be able to ask what their needs are is really important as well to get best practices.
That's great, Nate. That's great. I'm gonna come back to you one more time, and since we already got you here, um, let me ask you about your training. How are you providing resources and training for your employees so that they can provide a more inclusive experience for the guest?
Yeah, we have a very small team here at Virginia State, and so it's kind of a ongoing training exercise for us. And so again, really kind of using a listening ear has been really what I've pushed our team to be able to do, so that we're able to meet the needs of who we have. And then post events, we kind of do surveys. We do the things to kind of make sure we get some client and customer feedback, and then kind of implement plans around how we able to implement those. So those have been the best ways we've been able to do that in developing our team. When you have a team of less than 10 who are full time, you kind of everybody's on task of doing it and responsible for it, right? And so making sure that everyone is ability to have the awareness to look for those things and then be able to address them in real time, but also to try we collaborate together to think about those things ahead of time as well.
Gotcha. Okay. Agmar, coming back on you as well. Ask the same question. How are you training and empowering your employees to provide a more inclusive experience?
Absolutely. I'll speak very specifically about my department because we run the arena tours like an attraction, and
Mhm.
having an attraction attached to a venue is very, very different. Um, the training itself, we're about to start a new training class, takes about 100 hours. So when we were building this and we were building it with the company, it was very important that we were listening to our team members. And we did, thankfully, had one of our trainers internally in the department who needs special accommodations, can sometimes get up from their chair, sometimes they can't. Doors are very heavy. Those are things that we didn't think before. Is this door too heavy? How do we make sure that this team member is able to open up this door if they're going out with their guests? So it was really including them in the process and talking to our team members and making that training not an afterthought. So as we are training a regular path of travel, how we train them at the same time, how we can make certain accommodations, what needs to be done as we're going through it. And that's been really, really successful because now it's not ever thought about as a separate training. It's just part of your regular training, always thinking about the needs of all of your guests. And that has helped not make it seem like, oh, that's a separate type of guest. This guest needs something completely different, right? We need to go above and beyond. And at that point, you're not really listening to the needs of the guest because you're overcompensating a little bit. So I found that making the training all inclusive as much as you can has changed the language and has been really helpful for us.
That's awesome. All right. Thank you for that. Eric, coming back with you, the same question. How are you training and empowering your employees to provide a more inclusive environment?
So it's one of those things that we touch on our very first day on the job. So prior to ever actually working on the job training, in our general service culture training, we touch pretty heavily on that aspect, and that's something that every single individual of our organization, both full-time, part-time, and also venue partners, go through. So from day one, it's brought up, it's touched upon. And we also provide and have partnered with Culture City to do a lot of different kind of accommodation trainings and things along those lines. So we go through that route, and then looking forward, internally as a full-time organization, we're looking to get a committee started going over the summer where, you know, we really go through all of those little things that were mentioned before. You know, we don't think about it, but what does this path of travel always look like? Is this door too heavy? All those things that Agmar brought up are things that we want to take a more detailed look at. So with that, then this summer, when we have a lot more open time, that's not as hectic between the basketball season and the concert schedule, we're going to start doing specific trainings that are in collaboration with these activist groups, and then also the city of Charlotte, to better educate our team members on what all of these kind of accessibility needs are. A lot of people can see the physical ones that are apparent, but it's the conversation when you get someone saying, oh, well, they don't look like they need this or that. And so it's the continuing education of every single game, every single event, whatever it is, having that conversation and learning from it. So we try to be as on top of it as possible, but it's such an ever-changing topic. And, you know, even I'm sure all of us who are in it are almost learning something new every single day that we dive into it. So it's just a understanding that it's continuous learning. And whenever we get resources, we try to push that out to our team as well, as just saying, hey, here's a resource that you can use to better educate yourself on all these things outside of the trainings that we're providing.
That's awesome. Yeah. And the more that we can help them, the better it is. Just a reminder, yeah, don't be shy. If you have any questions at this point in the conversation, we'd love to hear from you. Drop them in the chat. We definitely want to make sure we catch everyone. And so don't be afraid to put anything in the chat if you have a question as we get closer to the end of our session. Want to jump back in again with our group here. Agmar, will come back to you. Want to ask you the question, when you're faced with a complaint, I like to call it more of an opportunity, a service opportunity. But when faced with a service opportunity, what steps are necessary to ensure that everyone's protected and you provide a positive outcome when it comes to a very sensitive topic of diversity, inclusion, and equity, considering that everyone has their own stake in that? So how do you do that to address those issues?
You know, it's every time it's different, right? I think it's important to start from a place of just listening. Just be in the moment, be present, and actually listen to what the person is saying. Don't be in your head trying to figure out how you're going to come up with an answer as to what they are saying, right? I think that's number one. Most things can be resolved with just a simple conversation of, hey, I hear you. I'm in this space with you. What can we do to make this experience better? How can we support you? And start from that base. And also, I training your team members to speak that same language. Part of the training that my team members go through, my supervisors, is showing genuine care, right? And what does that mean? So I'm like, hey, see, let's coach. Let's coach our staff. Let's figure out, instead of pointing what's wrong. And the same thing with the guests, right? We want to make sure that when they're coming in with a complaint, let's say, or an opportunity, that we're not just jumping to conclusions, right? Let's ask the questions. Let's explain the why. Let's give them some context as to, hey, this is why we made this decision, X, Y, and Z. Let's see how we can work together and come up with something. You're not ever going to be able to solve every problem. A lot of them you're going to have to say no. But it's always trying to solve for the yes. Maybe it's, we cannot move you to this seat. However, we may be able to do something here in the future. If you're a season ticket member and you're having this issue and you did not know when you bought the tickets, let's get your representative involved, right? Let's see what we can do to make it better and follow up with them. I think a big part that we're missing, and I applaud, I don't work in guest services anymore, but I used to, so I applaud any guest services department. Because that follow-up with that guest, even if they don't ask for it, when they've given us great feedback that we can take in, is so important, right? And it's not just important for them, it's also important for us to keep that humanity. Because the more we can make sure that we're making those connections and helps us, then we can be present for the next person that is coming in.
That's great. I like that's a great approach. And I think it's a good one to keep in mind as we look at it. One of the things that we look at is we in our training is we talk about unconscious bias and making sure that we really try to take our biases out of the conversation, which is just what you were talking about, Agmar, because we all have biases, but it's important that we kind of have to step out of that and look at it from a different perspective and try to put ourselves in the shoes of that individual to really get an understanding of how we can better address the guest need. So you hit on it very well. Nate, how about you?
Yeah, thanks, Cameron. I'll actually piggyback off of your point around biases is, and Agmar had mentioned it, listening is super important, but also really important questions and how you in the tone of way you ask your questions, right? Clarifying questions. Because the reality of it is, especially in the lens of diversity, equity, inclusion, is someone's experience based off their culture, their livelihood, their experience can be different than your traditional customer, right? And so their issue with something that may be happening in the venue that you're now trying to address may be happening because of how they are culturally have experienced, right? And so asking really important questioning in that listening process is also be important, and to remove those biases and to remove any expectations that they're your traditional customer, right? And kind of be able to listen it from that lens. Because you may have someone who's just, we had a concert here where it was the first time someone has ever been to a concert, right? Your traditional concert goer, right? And you're just make the assumptions, and then you realize they just never have had that experience before, and their complaint was based off of their other experiences that wasn't related to entertainment venue. And so you really have to ask really pointed questions and so in that training piece of developing, which is probably the hardest part, is knowing how to ask those questions to get the answers that you may need. Is the important listening and active listening, but then asking questions to be able to get to the real root of what the issue may be with a lens that is unbiased, so that you don't really imply something that you may not have intended to do.
Cameron, you were muted.
Cameron.
How about I try it? We had to get that in at least once. Check that the box now. All right, we can now move on. Eric, how can you ask the same question? How are you being able to handle those service opportunities so that everyone's protected and also comes out with a positive outcome?
Yeah, I think what Agmar and Nate both said kind of hit the nail on the head. So it's like the combination of both. It's one, having the empathy and like realizing that this is another person who is just there to have a good time. That's all people are coming to our events for. They want to create this fun, memorable experience. You know, the world is tough and scary. So when they're in our buildings, it should be the complete opposite of that. So it's having that understanding. And on the flip side, it's realizing that they are coming from their own specific backgrounds and their own specific experiences that have created this perception of what is happening. So whether we may be following our procedures like we think are appropriate, their perception of what is happening is their own reality. And it's really important to look at what that reality is, because just because we think it's okay doesn't mean it's okay for everyone. We're trying to create this inclusive space that everyone feels welcome in our venues. So those conversations are really important from beginning and end, not only the conversation with the guest, but also the conversations with the team members, the supervisors, security, all the people in the area, to get that full story. And then when we follow up, I'm really big on making sure we're explaining why we did what we did, because now there's a holistic approach to what's happening. So I'm explaining to this person, well, they may have asked you this, or this because of X, Y, and Z. And then it's almost like, okay, sometimes that light bulb clicks. Now we're more on the same page. We're still going to figure out how to make that experience better, because it's still a poor experience. So we have to recover one way or the other. But now everyone is understanding where everyone is coming from and how we got to this specific point, and then we can find the appropriate resolution. Sometimes that resolution, like we all know, may not be what's being asked, may not be possible. we may not be able to move someone for whatever their needs are from a 200 level to front row, center stage. That may not be possible, but we can come up with something that addresses the root of the concern that they're getting to. But in my opinion, it's a collaborative effort of, we have to come in with an empathetic viewpoint and ask the correct questions, not just ask questions for the sake of questions, get to the root of what is actually happening, and then also explain how we got here on our side. And then once all that information comes together, now we have the equation, and now we can find what that successful resolution is. But it really is a collaborative effort. It's not, one or the other has more importance. Both sides need to work together to get to that point.
Yeah, that's a great. I think collaboration is always good. You need to work together with various resources to make sure that you come up with a solution that works. It's none of us are smart as all of us, and it works better together. Let me throw in a question here from the chat that came in. I want to make sure we get it. I think Eliza Saturday threw out a very good question here. Are there any, and I'll throw it to the group and anyone can chime in, are there any specific training programs you suggest?
I'll jump in here because I've done 2 programs. One was actually through another organization called Pro Sports Assembly, which had a very kind of in-depth, I want to say it was a 6-week program that focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and really looking at it from an accessibility standpoint. So focused on, guests with disabilities, whether they are hearing or vision, and how to better assess what we provide as a venue to those individuals, and also as an employer. So like when you're doing presentations, even something like Zoom that we're on now, are we using captioning? Do we turn it on for people that might need it? When we're using a presentation, whether it's for a small group or a large group, and we think our voices carry, should we still be using a microphone in order to make sure that everyone can hear us? So little things like that they talked about, I think were important. So that was one good program that I attended. There was also another one through an organization called Rise that I took. This one was focused a little more on diversity, and that program was really good as well. I do want to say also, as a organization for IAVM and a committee with IAVM, we are looking into creation of our own training program for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So if that's something that people would be interested in, we'd love to know, because we're looking at moving forward with the creation of that type of programming, specifically through IAVM as well.
Thank you, Ebony. Anyone else have anything else they'd like to throw in as well?
I would like to add something. I've taken many classes and programs that have been directed mostly at full-time team members. So when you are presented with those opportunities, what I found really works best, since we're still figuring out what we're going to offer for our part-timers, is bring in that information that you have learned and include it in your trainings. For instance, we have our part-time supervisors help us with hiring. So when we have hiring fairs, they're out there, they're the ones doing all of the interviews. So I thought, we've had them do this so many times, and I feel like something is missing. So I did a train the trainer training that I created just with everything that I have learned through all of my resources, and talk to them about inclusivity, right? This is how we, because this is the first time that these new incoming team members are meeting you, right? You're setting the tone for the culture of the company. So it's about pronouns, using preferred names. How do we, if you're hitting a roadblock for X, Y, and Z, this is how, don't use language that may be discriminatory, right? Without knowing that it is. And it's going through all of those pinpoints and just helping them see it. So even if your company isn't offering something for your front of the line staff, you can add it to any training that you have, and get ahead of the curve and use your resources. And unconscious bias and bias was something that I really focused on in this training, and none of my team members had ever heard about this. And these are folks that have full-time jobs in other companies, right? So especially for our supervisors, we think, oh, they have all of this amazing experience. They're coming in with all of this great training. They know what they're doing. They may not. So always don't be afraid to just pepper in what you know and find creative ways to add it to your front of the line staff.
That's great. All right. Thank you, Agwar. I think that's really a great one. I would endorse the RISE program. We use that quite a bit. We have several sessions that we have throughout the course of the year that our front office staff takes part of, and our event staff is also involved in those as well, that really have various topics that are really very helpful. So I recommend that highly. All right, let me ask the next question here that we have. And then just remember, we're still looking for some questions. If you have questions in the chat, drop them in there. We'd love to hear from you. We'll go to Nate here again and ask the question: how is your senior leadership supporting your DEI efforts, and how are you creating universal buy-in? Because usually the biggest part is you can do it for the staff that you control. That's part of your club staff. But how are you able to do that with your third-party vendors that are groups that are also considered part of the facility?
Yeah, I'm in a unique situation here at Virginia State. We're a HBCU campus, and so that has been kind of something that is ingrained in our culture around DEI, buy-in and focus, right? So very much so is kind of an easy kind of buy-in from our leadership at the institution around how we make sure we manage that piece. From as we kind of think about our third-party vendors who come in, part of my conversation with them prior to even signing contracts with them is making sure that they have that type of lens in place. And it's not necessarily written in any contract any particular way, although many will have, their employer, statements around diverse hiring. But really just kind of get a sense of the culture that they create and kind of in those conversations and negotiations in those final moments for our vendors who are coming in to partner with us. And then with any trainings that we do for those third parties, inserting it into those as well. So it's easier. It's a little easier around the third parties in the sense of they want the work. They've got to comply with our systems and things that we have put in place at the venue, and we can hold them accountable to those things because of that. As you think about our senior leadership, in other scenarios and other venues I've had the opportunity to work at, there is, like I said earlier at the start of this was a relevant conversation 15 years ago. There's been conversations as I've had a long time around just buy-in around it and what does it look like from a top tier all the way down to your event and service staff look, and being able to put those into practical applications for your business, right? And as we think about the businesses that we run, sometimes it requires some buy-in. And so kind of thinking about it from a business mindset sometimes is easy for senior leadership to be able to digest, in the sense of, hey, we're talking about customer retention. We're talking about, staff retention, right? About being welcome in those workplaces. You're talking about return customer and dollars. You're talking about partnership opportunities. You're talking about all the things that that can be revenue generating for our businesses, and sometimes that lens works as well. But really talking about the moral obligation of why it's important is also is added to those conversations as well. And so sometimes it requires work. Sometimes it's easy because it's already bought in from the beginning.
That's great, Nate. And I think you hit a good point about it's not you bring in the business side of it, but you also talk about the moral obligation, especially as being a part of the community that we're ingrained in our various cities. It's very important that we definitely find a way to be able to make it not just something that we just put your name on, but actually has some meaning to it. That's a good point. Eric, I'm going to jump over to you and ask the same question. How are you getting senior management to buy in and support you? But then also, how are you getting those third party groups that are representing your organization also a part of that?
So for the first part of the question, since I've been a part of the organization with Hornet Sports Entertainment, that level of senior leadership has been pretty bought into all of this. So we have our DE&I council, which is comprised of different levels of the company from the C-suite all the way down, who has representation on the different kinds of topics that fall into this category. We also have different employee resource groups that hit all of these different levels, and even now the addition of full-time positions within this space to make sure that we're consistently staying up on what are the latest things that are impacting our team members. And then also from that senior leadership standpoint, they're really pushing for information from all of us within the organization. What are topics that we want to learn more about? What do we want to hear more about? And we take our a couple trainings throughout the year, both virtual and in person, but it's also an idea of what do the people want to learn more about, or where do we feel that we have blind spots that we need to uncover. So it's a continued conversation, between us as a DE&I council, and then also that senior leadership of saying, hey, this is what the rest of the organization is looking for. This is how we're expecting to get there. And pretty much it's looking for that sign off of them saying, all right, yes, we're going to endorse this. We're going to push this. And then when we have our all organization, all team info shares in these meetings, they're bringing this up. So it's coming from them. It's not only is it coming from us as peers, but it's coming from the leaders of our organization to show that, hey, this is something that is important to us. It's not just something that we need to check the box and say we're doing because everyone else is. No, it's an impactful part of what makes us who we are, and we can't forget that. So that's the first part. The second part, talking about our third-party vendors and how we're making sure they're together. We operate really on this mentality of we're one building and one giant team. If our hospitality team or our food and beverage team or our supplemental staffing team, whoever it is, if they fail, people aren't going to look at them and go, oh darn, X, Y, and Z company gave me a really bad experience. No, they're going to look back and say the Hornets or Spectrum Center created a really poor experience. So with that in mind, we're all on the same page of knowing that all of these trainings, all of these initiatives are collective. So we sit down once or twice a month as a collective group of people who are leading each department that impacts our guest experience and has a lot of those guest-facing touch points. And we talk through a lot of these things, and we provide the different trainings and come up with our kind of standard set of practices and acceptable standards when it comes to these topics. So it's something that it's not just us dictating to them and saying, hey, you have to do this, because we're saying it's a collaborative effort, understanding that their impact is just as important. So they're partaking in all the trainings that we are doing outside of each particular job specific training on how to operate in your specific sector. All of the general trainings when it comes to service or culture or the experience within this particular lens, they're all a part of. So it's never a conversation that hasn't been had with their leadership from the start, and they're aligned with our goals. So that collaborative effort really helps. So it doesn't seem like it's something that's forced upon these different groups, even though we all know how important it is. We're all coming to the same realization and the same understanding of what's important and what we're talking about. That way, all groups are also getting the same messaging. We're not getting different messaging from one person because, we said, hey, you need to come up with a DE&I training for your staff, or an accessibility training for your staff, or an unconscious bias training. And they're talking about one specific issue. And then the fan shop's talking about a completely different issue. And then it's not kind of the seamless unified training. So we work together as a group to come up with that. And again, then it goes back to this idea of we are one building, we are one team, we're all going towards that same goal. And we have that unified buy-in. It's not like we're pulling anyone along. We're not pulling teeth to get them to do things, because we're all on the same page and we've all helped create this initiative and are helping to shape the environment of what our arena and our individual teams are within the greater mission of our building.
That's great, Eric. I like the way combination of Nate keeping it at the contract level and getting that commitment early on, and then I like the way you're bringing it in, how you're keeping it collaborative in the process and making it part of the buy-in in the planning and the execution. That's awesome. Agmar, I'd love to get your insight before we turn it over to questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're lucky. OVG does such an amazing job with all of the properties to just make sure that we are all getting the support and training that we need. My building hasn't even been open for 3 years yet, so we're quite young. So this is an exciting time because our people and culture team, which I absolutely love that they switched the name from human resources to people and culture because it absolutely actively represents what they are doing. They're really working on creating these trainings and they're focusing to make sure that our senior leadership understands what the needs are for us here in the front of the lines. And they've been going through a lot of DEI training and it's trickled down to us. So it's an exciting time to be there because now that we've kind of opened the building, right? We all know it takes about 5 years to open up a building. We really are starting to create all of these programs. And a really great way to do it is we have our people and culture team do like a monthly theme, right? And it's really quite helpful because we have our ERGs, right? So we can go and we can talk to our ERGs about things that we need. But having a focus of the month is a great equalizer for everyone, right? So talk about equity. We're all together, no matter what we're working on, where we come from. To this month, we're going to focus on mental health, right? And these are the things that you can do. These are the things that we encourage you to do. Get out of your desk, go take a walk, right? Last month it was Move It. For March, it was Move It March. And we would have one volunteer that would just say, hey, I'm here. Let's take a walk together and let's eat our lunch together. And it's finding different ways to break up the day and give us a little bit of a breather. And that's a very, very important part, I think, as well, of this type of support for diversity and inclusion, right? It's a great way for all of us to participate together without it being in an official training. So
Great, great. Guys, I really appreciate your candor and your spotlight on your various programs. I do have one question I want to make sure we hit on before we turn it back over to Ebony and group to bring close it out here. Question, it looks like it came from Charles. The question was asked, can you share some of your experience and strategies regarding the gender neutral restroom trend, permanent installs or temporary converted restrooms, etc. Question mark. Anyone want to share that?
I can share at Virginia State, because we're a college campus, part of, and our building is just under 10 years old. They were actually incorporated into the build. So we have at least 2 gender neutral bathrooms on our venue side. And so we have opportunities. And then depending on the event, again, listening to your client's needs, if we have to convert one into it, we were able to do that as well.
Gotcha. Agmar, I think you're the newest of the buildings. What approach do you guys put into your design?
yes, we do have gender neutral restrooms as well. And we have the ability to switch our restrooms if we need to. We can change out the signage and create whatever type of restroom need we do for whichever event, which is really great. I think a lot of the questions, and I don't have an answer for this, but I think coming up, a lot of our team members are asking for gender neutral locker rooms. Right now, they can use one of our gender neutral restrooms if they are uncomfortable or they don't want to go to either of the gendered areas. And we do provide accommodations and we have certain things that we do, but now with the way that these stadiums are being built, the spaces are becoming smaller and smaller for the staff. And the premium spaces are getting bigger and bigger, right? Because we're in the age of experiences. What does the future look like when we're building these stadiums to take that into account? Because a gender neutral restroom is great. But I think often we're forgetting the needs of our internal guests who spend 10, 12 hours sometimes there in a shift and they need a space where they feel comfortable as well.
Yeah, and that is the challenge. And most of our buildings are not as new. Our building is just 20 years old, and we've taken the opportunity to, like, I think many buildings have decided to take some of the family restrooms and other restrooms and made them more gender neutral. Depending on the event, we have converted some restrooms and made them gender neutral as needed, based on based on the event that's happening. And so it's definitely a trend we have to look at. But I think it's a very good point. We need to start with our event staff as well, because this is their home away from home. And so how do we make them feel comfortable in the environment that they're in? And so that's important, a topic that we need to bring up as well. Folks, we can go on for a while here. We've got a lot that we've got to discuss here. So I'm going to turn it back over to Ebony and let her close us out for the day. And I think there's some other things that need to be taken care of, but I appreciate everyone's time. Agmar, Eric, and Nate, you guys are awesome. I got some new friends. Agmar, we got to definitely meet somewhere in downtown and make this happen somewhere. We have not met in person, so I look forward to doing that in the near future. With that, turn it back over to Ebony. Have a great day, guys.
Thank you so much, everybody. Greatly appreciate your insights. We got thank yous coming into the chat now. So I think it was helpful to more than, just me. So we appreciate the information that you were able to provide. Would love it if you guys can drop your contact info in the chat to allow people the opportunity, if they have any questions further on anything that you stated, that they can reach out and follow up with you for. So thank you all very much. We just got a question and said, who's Jeremy? Jeremy is the co-chair for the DILC. So Jeremy, I'll turn over to you real quickly so you can introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Jeremy Ackles. I serve as the director of events at the Greenville Convention Center. I also serve on the DILC as the co-chair and incoming chair. And so looking forward to continuing works like this. I took some great notes from our conversation today, and we're going to carry on this conversation on VenueNet as well. So be on the lookout for that. Engage with us on this topic. And looking forward to continuing to serve and create environments just like this one.
So again, thank you all. We really appreciate you attending. We do think that this is a really important topic, and as everything is that we cover with our E3s. If you have any suggestions, if there's anything that you would be interested in us talking more about, please feel free to reach out to myself or Jeremy. We'll make sure to drop our email addresses in the chat. You can let us know, and we will work with our committee to put those on. The other thing I would like to do, if possible, I had Amy create a quick poll. And if you would be interested in an actual class or courses focused on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging that were essentially hosted with IAVM, please take the poll, let us know, so we can create some additional programming around, the needs of our industry. Again, thank you guys so much, and I'll turn it over to Amy.
Thank you very much to everyone on the panel. What an enlightening conversation. This is what the E3 is all about. It's to bring topics to our members and beyond that truly matter. So thank you all very much for your time today. I know your time is especially valuable. So thank you for joining us. And to all of our attendees, thank you for your time today as well and joining in on the conversation. Just want to remind everybody before we sign off for today that you can support the Diversity and Inclusive Leadership Committee at Venue Connect. So if you're not already registered, get registered. Make sure that you sign up in your registration process to join us for our Celebration of the Cause reception, which is our fundraising reception each year. And those funds go to continue to produce these E3 webinars, as well as to provide scholarships, which are important to our members. So thank you all very much for today. I appreciate you, and I hope that you have a great afternoon.
Have a great one, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.